Hello everybody and welcome to this new episode of Books Up Close. I hope you're all doing well and keeping healthy. So today we are talking about the 2019 book In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. So before I go any further, just to throw up a content warning that this discussion does involve domestic violence, as that's the main topic of the book. So Machado is the author of a short story collection called Her Body and Other Parties, which was a National Book Award finalist. Machado is also the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship and is currently the writer in residence at the University of Pennsylvania. So this book is a memoir, but it's no normal memoir. It reinvents the form in so many ways. This is an astounding book. Before I even get to the proper review at the end, I'm just going to tell you now that this book is incredible. The writing is unbelievable. I read it in about 2 days, just straight through, not fully able to breathe properly. You know when you read a book and you read the chapter and you realise you haven't breathed in a whole page. It's that kind of book that really just sucks you in. What's interesting about the form of this memoir is that it kind of focuses on the dream house, which is a house that Machado shared with her ex-partner. And it imagines this dream house in a multitude of ways. So the dream house is where Machado's ex-girlfriend psychologically and physically abused her. So to approach the dream house, Machado does this in a multitude of ways. We have chapters such as Dream House as picaresque, or Dream House as lesbian cult classic, or Dream House as road trip to Savannah, or even there's more kind of cultural ones like Dream House as Nightmare on Elm Street or as Star Trek. And one of the most kind of staggering sections is Dream House as choose your own adventure story. So as you can imagine, this involves a section of the book, about 20 pages or so, whereby it says if you make this decision, go to page 219. If you make this decision, go to page 220. And what at first seems like a kind of interesting, kind of tricksy way of thinking through the problem, it is very quickly, within a few pages, the most devastating thing you will read. Is heartbreaking. So the book thinks about domestic violence or intimate partner violence, as some people call it now, both because domestic seems to kind of make small the idea of what this violence is, but also because domestic kind of suggests that it only happens within the house, as opposed to intimate partner violence, which shows the kind of complex ways in which it happens between a number of people. The book is really interested in how to depict intimate partner abuse, especially for queer people, especially for this lesbian couple. So part of the book, there is one chapter called Dream House as Ambiguity that is really a kind of academic essay of sorts on the idea of abuse and how it's talked about. So this essay, in a way, thinks through the lack of representation of domestic violence within queer communities, and the kind of absence of it in kind of written documents and books about violence in this way. The book also thinks through the idea of the archive. So how do we archive? How do we make sense of the past? How do we make sense of this trauma in particular? And Machado is really good at using these different genres, these different forms, whether it's Star Trek or fairy tales or the more academic essay, to do that archival work, to pull together stories from all these different places, including her own experiences, and try to make sense of them in one book. So it's both an exercise in archival work, as well as thinking about what an archive might look like, or what a queer archive might look like, whereby stories put in the archive are often the ones that are untold, are unheard, are not shared widely. The most interesting and original thing about this book, I think, is the way in which it plays with form, with genre, with style. At the level of the sentence, Machado is incredible at just constructing beautiful phrases, beautiful lines that range from the very poetic to the very matter-of-fact, but also the way in which she kind of harnesses so many different literary and linguistic forms, whether it is kind of walking us through the Bluebeard fairy tale, or then pulling in pop culture from the horror genre, from kind of canonical queer writing, then to the more academic and critical thinking. This book does so much in a short space of time, and each chapter is very short. So we get Dream House as X over and over and over again. And in a way, this gives us this kaleidoscopic view of what the dream house is, what this space is. But also, it kind of shows us the ways in which memoir as a genre can be stretched, its boundaries kind of pushed to its limits in a way, which is something like, as Machado kind of intimates, the experience of this abuse. That there isn't just one way to kind of make sense of it, because it is something that doesn't quite make sense. The first few pages of the book really take us through the kind of beginnings of the relationship, but very quickly we get a sense of things going wrong, that things aren't quite right. And then when we read the sections about the abuse, they're not gratuitous in any way, but they are heart-poundingly intense. And this is not some kind of lurid memoir in any way. It's not gratuitous, it's not over the top, but rather it is a really sensitive and nuanced way to look at this really awful thing that happened to Machado. I won't tell you much about the ending of the book, but suffice to say there is kind of a glimmer of hope by the time we get to the end. And in recent interviews I've heard with Machado, she's kind of said like she's going through the kind of book tour of the book at the moment, doing lots of interviews and promotional stuff, but after that she's like, I want to put this book aside, I don't want to talk about this book ever again, because this book really is her output, her way of dealing with this trauma that she obviously wants to move past. But in doing so, I think she's offered a lifeline of sorts to so many people, or a kind of way into thinking about intimate partner violence that might not have been there before, especially for marginalised communities, but also for anyone, really. She's had letters I've heard from straight people, from men, from queer people, from so many different people that have not seen their story represented in this way before. And what's astounding about that is that she's represented in a multitude of ways. That's where its genius lies. I can't recommend this book highly enough, though of course it is a kind of really dark subject matter and is really emotional, but nonetheless it is staggeringly good, and I would suggest everyone read it and then go back and read her short stories, which are also wild and interesting and funny and really attentive to the body, to emotion. So for that reason, this book is also getting 5 stars. There's literally nothing I would change about this book. I do want to reread it, but I need to give myself a break from it because it is quite heavy. But please do all buy it. I think it's fantastic. Please let me know in the comments, as ever, if you've read this book, what you think about it, whether you agree with my review, whether you have any points to raise. And also please like and subscribe if you haven't already, ring the bell for notifications, share this with as many people as you can, and join this little online book club that we're setting up. Okay, take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon.